to all. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Kimberly Eventide, and if you're new here, welcome. I talk about a lot of things, spiritual development and my personal stories. And I feel sometimes when we share things about ourselves, we often can help others understand that they are not alone. Although we all come from different perspectives, different spiritual journeys, and different life stories, I think we all are mirrors to each other, and I deeply believe that we all have something to teach. So, from my experience, this is what I can tell you about anxiety and how I passed my panic attacks and my anxiety. And it's an ongoing struggle, of course, but I used to actually be hospitalized for a couple panic attacks. I wanted to talk about my story because I had severe anxiety and panic attacks, and spiritually, I understand now what it actually means. And this is something that I think that I can talk about now that I went through it and I no longer suffer from them. So let's go back to the beginning with my personal story. I actually used to work for Clinique, and I was a makeup girl for a very long time because that's what I enjoyed doing as a part-time job while going to school and just trying to make money. And I've had some experiences with anxiety in my life, something that many of you know who come to my channel. And if you don't know this about me, one thing that is unique to me, but of course not unique to a lot of souls, is that I lost my mother at the age of 14, a very strong developmental time for me. And it caused a shift in my psyche and really made me question things and made me very, I guess, familiar with death at a young age. And I started learning about the spirit at a very young age, and it aided to my awakening, although it was very difficult and it was very hard. I do believe that losing my mother also was a part of my spiritual journey and my obstacles to overcome. And I still struggle with it because I still miss her greatly. So, a panic attack, energetically, it is described with symptoms that I will read to you right here. Anxiety is an emotion characterized by an unpleasant state of inner turmoil, often accompanied by nervous behavior, and it's subjectively unpleasant feelings of dread or over-anticipated events, and that can actually lead to panic attacks. Panic attacks is actually typically it begins without warning. It comes on very suddenly, and these are the symptoms: a sense of impending doom or danger, a fear of loss of control or death, a rapid pounding heart rate, a sweating, a trembling or shaking, a shortness of breath or tightness in your throat, chills, hot flashes, nausea, abdominal cramping, chest pain, headache, dizziness, and numbness or tingling sensation. When I had my panic attack that actually led me to the hospital, I felt a numbness within my fingertips and my mouth, around my mouth. It was like a tingling feeling because I was hyperventilating, and that was my body responding to all that stress within me. A feeling of unreality or detachment is also a symptom as well. So what happened to me was it was a clear indication that I was not dealing with some unresolved feelings. To me, a panic attack and anxiety is about stored up emotions, and our emotions have to be realized in some way. To come to the place of full spiritual development and actual self-actualization, then you have to realize your emotions at some point. And if you do not consciously do so, they will erupt from you like a volcano. And that's really what a panic attack is. It is the psychosomatic effects on the body when you are repressing emotions that you have not dealt with and you have buried down for a very long time. And anxiety happens with a feeling of fear because you have dealt with some traumatic events in your life. And so you are afraid that you're going to experience them once again. Um, so anxiety comes on in the form of fear. And then the panic attacks are the emotions that accompany the fear that you have not dealt with and you have not looked at head on to see what they actually are about. That's what a panic attack is. It's a volcano rushing of your emotions that have to eventually be felt. They have to be dealt with. And all souls are on a journey to spiritually develop. Okay. And what this means is, if you do not look at something consciously head on, you will experience it in some other form, in some other way. You might experience it through the projections of meeting others that project something about your subconscious onto you. You may just have some kind of lash outs and public explosions because it's something that you have not dealt with, and somebody triggers. And what's a trigger is pulling a button that's already cocked in a way. It's like a gun. You already have the bullet loaded inside you, and somebody just pulls the trigger and you go off because it is already existing within you. So to deal with panic attacks is it's a journey. It's a journey, and I commend anybody who goes through them. I know how hard they are. And I thought that because I have noticed something about myself over the few years, that I have not had them in quite a long time. And of course, I deal with anxiety on one level, but I do not experience anxiety in the same way that I did. And I also don't experience panic attacks in the same way I did, where I have been hospitalized, I would say about 2 to 3 times. And my EKGs always come out normal. The doctors take me in, I get into the ambulance, or I have a friend drive me because I'm hyperventilating. I mean, this was when I was in my early 20s. And when I was working at that clinic counter, as I was starting to talk about, it just happened right there on the floor of the store that I was working at. And it was embarrassing. I felt a lot of shame. And they put me in a stretcher and they brought me to the hospital. And the doctor looked at me, and it is about the emotions, because they looked at me and all of my like my EKG levels were normal and everything. So it was really about my emotions. And eventually I came to terms with understanding this. So these are the things that helped me throughout the years. And I wrote down some ideas of what I remember and how I overcame anxiety. And I'm doing this because I have seen a lot of videos on this topic. And I thought, well, this is something I can talk about too, because I've had experience in this way. So, number 1, talking to someone is probably the best thing you can do. Many of you may be too proud and too scared maybe to go to a counselor or to some kind of therapist, and you may believe that you can go through this on your own. But I will say, I was the same way. I believed that I could do it on my own. When you come from a certain level of intelligence and you're well read and you make good grades, you get to a point where you think you just can do everything on your own. And it's something that I had to learn at a young age, that there are professionals that are in certain roles as counselors for a particular reason. And this is something that I learned at a young age. And I ended up going to a wonderful man who was actually like a shaman and a psychotherapist, who helped to train me on how to get in touch with my emotions, because one thing about me is that I'm always good at getting in touch with other people's emotions. I can feel and read others' energies and emotions very well. However, there are certain aspects of my own self that I don't want to get in touch with. And that's something that I've had to learn over the years. So I have finally embraced that about myself, and I'm not afraid to look at any of the emotions that are inside of me. And this is something that I have learned over time. So talking to someone was the number one thing. Going to someone and actually just getting to a place where you can remember the core of the feelings that have been stored up for a long time has truly helped me a lot. My issue was that I was dealing with a lot of guilt from my mother's death. The way that she passed on was traumatic, because since she died of a brain tumor, um, she she left the world in a way that she lost a lot of her faculties and just her movements and things like that. And she stopped being a mother to me. And so as a young girl, when I was going through this around 13 and 14, it was a burden in a way. That's how I saw it. And that was selfish of me, and it definitely wasn't the way that I should have been. But this is what helped me go through my spiritual awakening and become more of a selfless person than what I was in the past. So I was dealing with a lot of personal grief, and also guilt and shame. So going through that experience and getting to the bottom and the core, either going through kind of I didn't go through a hypnotist session, but I went through a session in which he was able to relax me and get me to a place of remembering some of the key memories about my childhood and about what I went through, because the brain has a fabulous kind of defense mechanism where you can actually you can put and store all of the negative feelings and positive feelings into your subconscious. And so that's what happened to me. I basically stored all of the negative feelings that I was dealing with into my subconscious, and I tried not to look at it. And eventually it erupted in this grand way in front of everyone. And I ended up being hospitalized about 2 to 3 times for it before I actually started to get to a point spiritually where I understood what this was about. And this is what started to get me further into my spiritual development. So talk to someone, someone that you trust, somebody that you can open up to. And I would say that it's hard to trust people. It is, in some form, but you have to take that leap of faith at some point. When you sign up to go to a counseling session, you just have to believe somewhere deep inside of you that what you are doing is the right thing. And as you do it, you will experience that it is actually the right thing for you. So talk to someone, number one. Number two, get above it all. And I mean this mentally. And what happened to me is that my spiritual development and getting closer into who I am was on the path of understanding more about the quantum world and the way that energy works. So you must train yourself to see yourself as a spiritual being, and as all this is energy moving around, and nothing is really temporary, nothing is really permanent, but it's temporary. And you can exact change in the way that your energy expresses itself. And so I started to see myself as a spiritual being, and I stopped thinking of myself as a damaged girl who lost her mother. That was my label for a very long time. And that type of label that you embrace within yourself will aid to a sense of fear, anxiety, isolation, and all of those things that we deal with. And when you stop seeing yourself as just a human in a meat suit and just somebody that has a tragic story and that's the end, when you come to the realization of as you being a spiritual being, having a experience in the material world in order to achieve a certain state of spiritual development, this is when you get above all the tragic events in your life. This is what I can tell you. This is what has helped me. This is what has moved me past anxiety and owning these types of things that are labeled as disorders. They're not disorders. They're temporary events in your life that you must face. And that's how I have come to see this and have moved past personally. Now, this may not work for everybody. Some people may have to take medication for anxiety, and they may have to move past it in that way. And that's fine. That's your personal story. But I do want to show another perspective that is out there for those that are looking for it, for those that are looking for a different way than taking medication for it. I'm trying to show you a spiritual perspective and coming through certain psychological issues and disorders in a different way and on a different path. So I got above it all, mentally, spiritually. When I started to become a Zen Buddhist, when I started to meditate daily, when I started to open my mind to spiritual books. I was always a curious person. I was always into spirituality, and I had a father that definitely taught me a lot about energy and consciousness and spirituality. But as all parents might learn, your child has to learn on their own. And they can't take all of your wisdom and your knowledge for themselves, but they must find it on their own at some point. And that's what happened to me. I had a wonderful father who wanted to teach me about consciousness and help me with my spiritual development. However, I needed to find it on my own. And I did, through my own trials and my own journey of going through this. I wrote down here, getting into metaphysics and quantum physics of energy can help. Studying the subject of actual quantum physics, the pseudoscience or the fringe science or the new age science, well, it helps. And here's how. Many years after reading Brian Greene's Elegant Universe, it made me see my anxiety in a new light, a more elegant one that told the tale of a young woman who was learning to overcome the emotional disease in her own self. And when I say disease, I mean dis-ease. Seeing yourself as a spiritual being, not an anxiety-filled, damaged person, can truly help and shows truly an elegant universe that is moving you towards something greater than what you may know at that moment in time. So that was a great help to me, and that's why I wrote it down as number 2. Number 3. Nature. Nature has no fear, no anxiety. Adapt to the pace of nature in your life. The more you connect to nature, the less human type of disorders you will have. Although nature is connected to humans, it is about going above and beyond some of the human psychosis that we create within our own minds of overanalyzing and overthinking. Just be like nature, be like a tree, allow your leaves to drop, flow with the cycles of time and the seasons. Connecting to nature deeply truly helped me. And so if anyone is experiencing any form of psychological disorders, I believe, and I have a theory, that when you reconnect to nature, these types of things become very small. They are less important and they're more of a label to you, but rather just a season to go through or a cycle to go through. Connect to the movement of nature. There is no anxiety, there is no fear, and there is no hidden truths. Nature is a wonderful teacher of this. Everything is on the surface, unless it's below the surface, underneath the ground. But everything is what it is as it appears in nature. And so when you adapt to the pace of nature, And when you actually connect to nature, and when nature becomes your true teacher, you are at a state where you are more truthful with yourself. You're more ready to see what's really there, and not give yourself fantasies or lies. Because I wrote down, humans are the only creatures on earth, truly the only creatures on earth, because animals cannot lie to themselves, nature cannot lie to us. Humans are the only ones that can lie to others and lie to themselves. And so the more you get connected to nature, the less you lie to yourself, the less you lie to others, the less you even have the need to lie to others, because it is about you understanding your authenticity and believing in it, and quite honestly, not caring what others think, and just moving in that pace of just natural acceptance that nature does. You know, there's a consciousness behind nature, which is really beautiful to see, but it's not the type of consciousness that humans have. It's a consciousness that has more wisdom and truth behind it. And that's hard for me to express, but it's just something that I feel inside. So the more that you connect mentally to nature, the more you become like a tree, you know, and that's kind of the goal, is to become so stable, so secure in a sense where you can stand very firm in your roots like a tree, and anything can happen and wind can try to blow you over and everything, but you're connected in a very deep spiritual way. And this is a way that I feel that nature can teach humans to be. So that is something that truly helps me, being an elven soul, being someone that has always related well to the fairies, to the elves, and to nature itself, and being someone that has been attracted to some of the old wisdom that is nature connected. Well, this has always helped me a lot. Number 4, sit in stillness and meditate. Only after I became a Buddhist could I stop my anxiety and my panic attacks. Why? Because you slow down the mind. And anxiety happens when the mind is overrun with negative thoughts and a self-tape that you play over and over again. And you may not even hear it consciously, but subconsciously you will. And so sitting still and meditating and getting into that type of schedule for yourself teaches you to quiet those thoughts of the mind and listen more to the truth of the intuition, the higher self, which is what you can get in touch with when you meditate. It's like all the mental chatter goes away, all of the experiences and the events go away, and what is left is your true self, your higher self. That is the voice that will give you the answers and will help guide your way. It's not just yourself, it's kind of an overarching oversoul of the universe that I feel is guiding you. And I think that that's how that I have found more guidance in that way. Number 5, learn the art of surrender. To give in from trying to control things in your life, which is the main reason why people suffer from anxiety. Anxiety happens because you fear that you're out of control and that dreadful things will happen that are not in your control. Of course, I lost my mother at a young age. So, of course, that new program came into my experience. Oh, you will lose people. You have no control over people that you love, and you can't control that they will stay with you forever. And these are still anxious thoughts that run through my mind. I mean, now that I'm married, I think about that sometimes with my husband. Oh, he'll leave me one day. But there is a type of learning to surrender that truly helps. And surrender is a very interesting type of art. It's a way of giving yourself up in a very kind of humanistic way, and allowing yourself to kind of just float amongst the universe and the stars, and feel in some sort of way that there's a power, there's an energy, and there's a force behind your life that you can give yourself up into, and you will be okay in the end. Surrender is a type of art that does take a little bit of spiritual faith, not necessarily in a deity or a god, but in an energy that moves through us all. And it does take a perception that you might have to open up to. And hopefully you can go through that a spiritual awakening that will give you that sense of confidence and that sense of inner peace that you might be looking for. And if you are experiencing anxiety, allowing yourself to understand how things will move and flow in your life, and to surrender to them, but to also understand when you can control things, because there are things that you can control, and I do believe in personal responsibility very much so, but there are things that you can't control. There are things that you have, in a quantum physics way. Some of the great physicists and metaphysics of physics of this time talk about how there is more evidence that is coming to surface that truly what we are is we are experiencing our life on this dimension, but we really reside in a much higher dimension, and that's the higher self. So when you connect to the higher self, it allows you to look at your life from a different perspective, from a higher perspective. And so learning to surrender the ego self, the ego identity of the small human on earth, and surrendering it to the higher self is almost like you get answers to why certain events happen. And you start to see your life as kind of like a storyline that is going on, that you have agreed and have set a contract with in order to experience for developmental purposes. And so that truly helps is to move into the art of surrender to a higher energy that is outside of the ego, not necessarily outside of yourself, but outside of the ego, the small identity of the human that thinks that this is all there is and that life does not go on. That's human ego, not reaching towards the super consciousness. So reaching towards the super consciousness is what I believe is about learning the art of surrender, to give in from control, and to let go of hiding, to let go of fear of the unknown and embrace it, to let go of old ideas that you are broken, and instead to embrace ideas that you are moving towards something magnificent. And I believe that. Carl Sagan even had a beautiful quote saying that something unknown is moving everything towards something more, I think he said magnificent. And I think Carl Sagan was really in touch with that type of energy in the universe that many people are tapping into once they have their spiritual awakening. Number 6, cultivate self-love practices into your life. This is huge. Be organized. For me, it helped to have a clean space, because a cluttered space kind of equaled a cluttered mind, and seeing things more clearly helped me on a physical level. Take time for yourself. You deserve this. Pamper yourself, treat yourself. These are all things that you can just kind of mentally soothe yourself and calm yourself. And these do have effects. After I've learned how to adapt this into my life, instead of looking at what I could give to others, which is the type of person that I always was, and especially when it came to relationships, I would give way too much of myself and not enough to myself. I would give way too much to others and not enough to myself. And so I learned over time this nice balance to always be able to think about myself, to treat myself, pamper myself. And it does have a calming, soothing effect on your psyche. I said, express and vent yourself creatively, because it's so important that you use the power of creativity to express your inner truths, your emotions that you may be bearing inside of you. Draw, paint, sing. Not only just speak to others, but use other forms and other mediums to actually vent and express. Self-expression is, I think, very important, because self-expression is opening up the gateway spiritually and energetically of all of the pent-up emotions inside of you. Now, there is a type of kind of stoicism that's also needed. Like, I mean, I don't believe in maybe I'm I'm like a weird balance here, because if you knew me in my real life, I'm not somebody to always go to people to talk about my feelings and my emotions. So it's kind of hard for me at times, but it's something that I do realize that is needed as well. So there is a delicate balance. There's a discernment that's needed of when you're kind of overindulging in self-expression and talking too much about yourself, and then there's a moderation where you understand that you don't talk enough about yourself, you don't express yourself, you don't express your divine truths, you don't express your emotions inside, and then those feelings have nowhere to go except for outwards in a panic attack one day when you least expect it. So always find a way that you can vent. You can let go of these emotions and these expressions deep within inside of you. They have to go somewhere. Um, and I think that that is cultivating a sense of love for yourself, a self-love practice. Being able to appreciate yourself, to love yourself enough to give you the opportunity that your thoughts, your feelings are valid. They're important. There's something that people should hear that love you and care about you. Keeping feelings to yourself, what I have learned is that it's more about a lack of self-esteem rather than being shy. It's about feeling like your feelings are not that important or that nobody would care anyway. Well, try. Try somebody. Take that leap of faith, and you never know what you will find. I have discovered that in my life. And it has been an incredible adventure learning that people do care, when I thought at one point that nobody did. And that was also attributing to my anxiety, because I thought that nobody would care about what I was experiencing and going through. So allow yourself to purge, to self-express. That's the divine throat chakra. And if you close that up, you're going to have a hard time opening up the inner eye and allowing that chi energy to flow all the way through. And then eventually the divine crown chakra opens up. So if you're stuck in the throat chakra, if you're stuck here with expressing your emotions and your feelings, the next step for you is to learn how to move past that blockage, to care more about yourself, to love yourself more, to express, to let that go, so that that beautiful prana inside of you can flow fully instead of being locked here. Because your heart may be open and it may be ready for love, but if you're not expressing your feelings and you're keeping them all to yourself, can't move past true divine love. You can't experience that. So that's what I have learned. And that's why I'm very self-expressive now, at one point when I was not. And I would say that the elves, Tolkien wrote about how the elves have a problem with pride. That if they represented any type of opposite of virtue, like the sins, the seven sins, he wrote in the Tolkien letters about pride. Whereas dwarves would be greed, elves would be pride. So if you are a prideful person, if you're a soul, an elven soul, you may be dealing with that. And pride is not necessarily the idea that you think you're always better than others, but that there's a lack of surrendering to a higher self, a higher power that's outside of the ego. And that's really what pride is about. So that definitely helped me learn that. Because pride is not really self-love. It is the false sense of self-love. Let's just say it's not the authentic truth of self-love. It's giving others maybe a mask, a facade of self-love, but it's not really love. Morgoth, who embodied pride fully in the Silmarillion and in Tolkien's stories, who was Sauron, for those of you who saw Lord of the Rings but didn't read the Silmarillion, that same energy continues out throughout the ages. That energy is the ultimate pride that makes you fall, and that is something that I personally have learned. And pride, something that makes me always feel so sad for characters like Morgoth and Melkor. They're one and the same, but that type of energy is that I understand that it comes from actually a lack of self-love. And that arrogance is not really authentic self-esteem, but it's a false one that will fall. So falling is quite literally and figuratively in a way that you fall. You fall from the collective because you're acting arrogant and prideful, but you're also falling further from your own true, authentic self. And you lose more of a feeling of self-love within yourself. So cultivate self-practices, and that will really truly nourish your spirit over time. And you will become less likely to have these anxieties and these panic attacks because you have soothed that inner child or that inner person that is just kind of calling out for love, calling out for understanding, and is afraid. And sometimes we can't look outside of ourselves, but we certainly can. But when we can't, then all we have is ourselves to deal with those feelings. So you must teach yourself the art of self-love. Number 7, the art of breathing deeper. Oh, this is a big one. So the yogis know this, that there are certain types of breathing techniques that truly help to cleanse the mind, this body, and the soul. As a singer, I know about breathing in a way that really helps to fill your body, your belly, expand your lungs, and to fully sing. And I'll teach it to some of you, because maybe a lot of you, like me, before I went through vocal training, when you breathe, so when you inhale, you should actually feel your stomach expand and your lungs expand, because you're actually taking in the air. You should feel your lungs expand. Shallow breathing is when you breathe in and your lungs contract because you're like pulling in the air, and that's not how it works. The best way to do deep breathing exercises is when you do yoga, or when you're in a kind of doing stretches or any kind of exercises. You can lie down and put a book on your belly and learn and train yourself how to breathe better and deeper. Because hyperventilating, which comes through panic attacks, is because of shallow breathing. You must have been shallow breathing for a long time because you're dealing with the emotions. Your brain is not training yourself to calm yourself down through the art of breathing deep, but you're taking in shallow breaths. And eventually your breaths get really shallow that you start hyperventilating. And that's the tingling that you feel because your body is losing oxygen. And that's really what a hyperventilation episode is, and that's what a panic attack goes to. So lie down on your stomach and put a book so you could feel it, or just your hand if you want. And what you're going to do is you're going to breathe in, and you should feel your belly actually rise out and your lungs expand. And then when you breathe out, then your lungs should collapse because you no longer have the air. And so people a lot of times do the opposite, where they're breathing in, and that's shallow because the air only goes here and it doesn't get into the full lungs and the stomach. I mean, you just don't feel that. So breathing deep, learning how to do that over time helps, because in moments of extreme stress, you get the worst news. You get a call from your friend. You hear that a loved one passed. You need to teach yourself in that moment how to calm down if you want to consciously live in a state of awareness and not moving up and down emotionally on the roller coasters of life. You will feel, and you definitely can feel your emotions, but what I have learned over time is that in those moments of panic and fear and trauma, you can actually move past those, and you can train yourself to just breathe deep in that moment and then respond. And you will be a healthier person for that. And I could just only tell you that from personal experience, and you will have to go through that to see. But try it. You know, next time you're in a state of stress and you feel that within you, try it next time. Breathe. Remember to breathe, and breathe deep. Like I said, fill your lungs, expand your whole belly with air. Air has a precious quality to it energetically. It fills us with life, with the breath of life. And when you forget to breathe, that's when you're searching for air, and that's hyperventilation. So it's almost like you have to train your mind to know that there is air all around you at all times. You simply have to know how to utilize it to the best of the ability. And I believe that advanced beings use the nature gifts to the best of their ability. So if humans want to get to that point, they have to learn how to use the sun, the air, the water, dirt, everything in nature to the best of their ability, to the highest potential. And that's when I feel that humanity will reach its pinnacle and climax and full potential. I truly do believe that. So learn the art of breathing deeper. You can go online, you can learn about the techniques of breathing, but that's just a simple just way of learning to breathe deeper instead of shallow breathing, which is what people do throughout the day. And they might not even know it. It's very unconscious. But when you consciously teach yourself to breathe deeper, you can then learn the art of breathing deeper in those moments. Number 8, I say this with love and with complete compassion because I understand. Get out of your head and get into the shoes of others. And what I mean by this is that if you are somebody that suffers from depression or anxiety, anything that has to do with the mind and emotions, volunteer. Go out into the world and help others that are less fortunate than you, meaning they don't have a roof above their head at that moment. And you know, these are the experiences that expand your perception and allow you to have that kind of getting out of it experience where you just awaken to the fact that, you know, you are not what you think you are, and this world is not just what you think it is. And when you get out of your own head and into the shoes of others to learn about their lives and to help them volunteer, as soon as I went through this process of healing, I started volunteering at PetSmart, and I started cleaning cages of the cats that are up for adoption. And it was a wonderful experience for me because although cats, I can't really step into their shoes, empathically, I could understand their need to be played with, their need to be pet and loved and you know, cared for, because they sit in cages all day waiting to be taken home. So I volunteered to clean up cages at PetSmart, and you can do that. You can actually be a volunteer at PetSmart, and that's just something that I did. And then I also read at elderly homes because a lot of people in these homes, they're left alone. And so when you go to volunteer to read to them, and I joined a choir group that used to go and sing to them. These are ways in which you get out of your own head and into the perspectives of others. And it's not spiritual bypassing, it's not forgetting about your own problems, it's about an awareness that expands within you. And this is what truly has helped me. And this is why I do not suffer from anxiety today. And, this is what my channel is about, moving into the shoes of others and trying to help from that way. And also, taking my experiences and helping if I can. So that's something that truly helped. Volunteer work, help others who may need your help, and become maybe a teacher to help others. So these are all ways that keep you at a state of constant understanding of where you are so that you don't spiral down into your anxiety and your panic attacks. Once I started doing that, I never did. Also, it improves your sense of self-worth and self-esteem too. And that's not the only reason to do it. But when people do help others, there's a byproduct of that. And the byproduct is to let go of maybe the guilty feelings that you had in the past, the feelings that you're an awful person and nobody loves you in the past. When you make new friends, when you experience things on another level as far as helping a person who could truly help, use your help at that point, well, that's an eye-opening experience, and I thought that it was important to talk about. Number 9, allow yourself to cry. And I picked Arwen's famous crying scene for this very point. In the spirit of Niana, who was the Vala of crying and tears, here's what I wrote. Tolkien had a wise quote in his book, "I will not say, do not weep, for not all tears are an evil." This, I believe, comes from his personal experience of being part of a war and seeing his comrades die in front, and having the experience of seeing people cry for those loss or the suffering. And in that moment, he came to a realization that I have as well, is that tears are very cleansing, very healing, and powerful as a suggestion of love. And love is a powerful force in the universe. Love is a way to transform many things. When we release our tears, we are surrendering and showing our love, because love is shown by compassion. And so the tears of Niana is because she is open enough, brave enough to cry for the sufferings and the injustices in the world of Arda that other beings may be removed from because they're not consciously thinking about that. They're not in a place of compassion. And so she is the Vala that is needed, because by crying, you cleanse, you heal. Allow yourself crying breaks. And this is something that I had to learn because I was not a crier for so long. And of course I would have panic attacks. I was trying to be strong, hold down everything inside of me, and never cry. Well, you know what? Now what I do? I schedule crying breaks. I do. I love and I look forward to times when I can sit in the bathtub and cry, or I could lie in my bed and cry. And it's important to consciously understand what you're doing, that you're not crying as like this no ending abyss to your sadness and no healing. You're crying to release, to let go of the experiences that you've had. And so crying breaks may be something you might want to schedule. And you could do it in a way where you don't have to write it down. That would be silly. Like, I can't see myself doing a to-do list. Like, I have to cry today. But you could just consciously kind of feel, you have to be in tune with your own emotions, and you have to know, like, I've been feeling really down lately. There's been a lot that has been hitting my plate. Then draw yourself a lovely bath. Put lavender salts, rose petals, bubble bath, whatever you want, and sit and cry. And allow yourself to just feel. Because if those feelings are not felt, they will come forward in another way. They will find themselves in another way, come to realization and to surface. And if it's not sadness, it could be anger. A lot of angry people are actually very sad. And that's actually why they are so angry. So crying breaks is important. And you get to a point where you allow yourself and you're okay with crying. And that's kind of in the art of surrendering as well. And once you do, you stop crying as much because you have allowed yourself kind of a pacing of emotional release. And so the anxiety and the panic attacks start to disappear because your emotions are not bottled up anymore, but you're learning to deal with them as they come. You're being very truthful and authentic with yourself and very honest with yourself. And you're just allowing the tears to come. And tears are the physical release, the manifestation of the toxins from the negative emotions that you have dealt with, the vibrations on your body. They need to come out to cleanse your body. It is literally a release of the toxins within you. So do not be afraid to cry. And that's why I picked that picture. And these are the things that truly has helped me. I know that there can be many more. Some of you may have experienced anxiety and panic attacks. If you know any other thing that you want to put down, absolutely do. These are the major ones that definitely have improved my life. And if I can share those pearls of wisdom with you to help, then that is what I do today. So everyone, thank you for joining in. I'm going to just take a look at these comments here and see if anybody has any questions. Well, there's a lot. Hello, hello. Oh, okay. Yes. Yes. Siren of the Void. I have experiences of panic attacks. For me, it is mostly fear of repressed emotions coming to surface. Yes. It led to issues around releasing them through crying. Yeah, I mean, because if you think about what is anxiety, anxiety is the fear of the unknown, the fear of something terrible that's going to happen. And why do people have anxiety? It's because it's a programmed response to prior events. And so your mind slips into an unconscious state where you think that it's almost like we're trained. It's almost like training a dog. It's like the unconscious mind is very much like training an animal, in the idea that in the state of unconsciousness, your mind will just go on repeat. You'll just unconsciously go through the emotions, through the same thoughts that you've had, unless consciousness and awareness comes in. And that is the transformation. And when you change that loop, that self tape that has been playing, it is the awareness that does it. It's not positive thoughts. It's not really anything superficially that you bring in. It's about just your awareness of it. And when that awareness hits, that's when I think that you stop fearing so much and you learn how to let go. And that's what I have definitely seen. Shingir, is that how you say your name? I'm so sorry if I don't know how to say it. It is very sweet. You are so smart, enlightened as well. Please watch the movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Okay, I will. I take video recommendations and book recommendations seriously because I feel that that is you as a mirror to me, to show me something that that I can use. So I definitely will, and thank you for joining, and thank you for your sweet comment. Peace, mind, thoughts. Crying to release emotions, also very good therapy. Yes, and you, yes, definitely. It really is. It allows acceptance that the situation has already happened and open new doors to move forward. Absolutely, it's that release, with release is letting go. And when you let go, new things can appear in your life, and new things can happen. That's what I absolutely do believe. Elmo call 911. Ego, ego, edging God out. Yes, and this is a very deep, it's a very deep statement. What is God? Well, God to me is the collective. And so if the ego comes into play and is it's too imbalanced with the collective, and you think you're all alone, and you know, the pride keeps you from others. It's edging the collective out. It's edging the universe out in that way. So that's how I see it. I definitely do see ego as edging the totality out, the absolutum out, and relying on only your small self instead of being in touch with the super consciousness. Siren of the Void, I do want to meditate, fully understand my spirituality and soul origins. Yes, then meditate daily. It truly helps. Peace of mind. The breath is a powerful tool to refresh the love within your heart, release, let go of what no longer serve you. Oh, yes, absolutely. And, oh, Prolol, are you a pagan? I am all things. No, truly. I see truths in all paths. I am part of the Elven spiritual path, which I believe has answered that within me. It's a pantheism path where it includes paganism and theism together, because pagans are those that will respect and worship and devote to aspects of the collective. And theists are more about just worshiping like the one energy that flows through everything. So I'm kind of both. I see both as aspects of everything and the energy through all things. So I think that when you are in touch with the truths in all paths, you become aware of that. And that has been my journey. So I am not specifically pagan, although I am more like a neo-pagan in the idea of being connected to nature. So the path of Wicca, the Druid paths, all that is something that I closely relate to and is kind of in my arsenal of old wisdom, because I believe I have some past lives dealing with that. So I hope that answered your questions there. Okay. Oh, Dean Perez. I go to Karen Carpenter to cry. You know, that's something I did not mention, but you're absolutely right. Music is a wonderful tool to push out certain emotions and feelings. There is a song, I will post it, and I think I did before on one video. I think it's the one that's in Arrival, the movie about the aliens. It's all instrumental. I'm looking for it right now. It is the most beautiful, sad, just kind of mind-opening instrumental song. I think it's called, I'm looking for it right now, Nature of Daylight. Nature of Daylight by, who is it by here? Max Richter. I can't play it because of copyright reasons. I'm so sorry. But Max Richter on the Nature of Daylight. I'll post it. If you need a song to cry to, you can have that one. That one's beautiful. And you know, if you listen to some of the Elvish music, and some of the songs that I have created have had that type of tone to it, and it's not that I have gone to that for a purpose, but if you listen to some of the music in the Lord of the Rings, it's beautiful. And there's a type of there's a type of purity to it, but there's also a type of sadness, a melancholy kind of sound to it. But I think that's really beautiful. And for certain souls that kind of resonate with that and are okay and in touch with maybe that bitter side of reality, and a bittersweet side of reality, I should say, not bitter, but bittersweet side of reality. I feel that elven music, especially the soundtrack of Lord of the Rings, can definitely bring tears. And it's funny because it's not tears of sadness to me, but it's more like tears of release, letting go, but in a happy way. So that's how I see elven music and those voices. And Enya. Enya can bring some tears, beautiful tears, I feel. So absolutely, I do feel that. I feel like Niana is part of this video here. The Vala of crying. I didn't want it to be about that, but it's true. And I think that if humans can become more okay with that, and to allow themselves to express it, there's still a very strong stigma in society about crying. It's still seen as weak by some people, and I see it as strength. I've learned to see it as strength. At one point, I might have felt like I would be weaker for it, but now I see it as only strength to allow myself to release in that way. So, Faith, thank you so much. Now I see why I do not have panic attacks. I cry so much. It is embarrassing. I've had a very hard life. Well, Faith, cheers to you. And the idea that you have found you have found the path of least resistance to your emotions. And your body is thanking you, because when you store up your emotions, it's terrible. You cause stomach aches because the fear resides in your stomach, and that's the solar plexus area of the chakra. You cause chakra blockages by storing emotions in you without a release. So absolutely wonderful for you to do, Faith, because chakra blockages, they have to basically, how they're unblocked is by emotional release. That's what a chakra center is. It's an energy center within you that represents different levels of emotional states, different levels of consciousness. And when you apply the wisdom according to the different levels of consciousness from those chakra states, that's when you unblock those centers. And that's the secret of chakra unblocking. It's about emotional release, dependent on the parts of the chakra that is blocked, such as the sacral chakra will be blocked by a lot of things to do with the reproductive area, sexual experiences, sexual memories. So you'll need to go in there emotionally, look at what it is that you have been through, deal with it, learn to see it from a different perspective, and move forwards. That's all you can do. You can only move forwards, or you can move backwards. But you can't move backwards in time. So you have to move forwards. And if you're on the path of spiritual development, it's better for you to do so. So that's all I can say. But thank you so much for joining in. I'm so happy to see all of you. As you can tell, I'm working now during the day, so a lot of my streaming will probably happen around this time at 11 a.m. Because I'm working in the afternoon, actually, not the day, but in the afternoon. And then at night will be interviews and maybe some videos that I feel like I have to do, but a lot of them will be during the day, now that I kind of removed my morning hours in order to focus more on my channel. So Hanenle for watching, which is thank you in Elvish, which means thank you from the heart. And I hope that all of these things that I offered you today can help you in some way. And at the very least, know that you are not alone in dealing with panic attacks or anxiety. But take it from me, as somebody who was once hospitalized for them, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and things will get better. I promise.